the second presenter is David Fesmar from MIT. The title of the paper is Do Investors Care About Corporate Externalities, Experimental Evidence. David, you have 30 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dong. So you can see my screen. You can see the mouse also?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is, as you said, a paper. This is an experiment on that tries to test whether investors care about corporate externalities. It's joint work with Jean-François Bonnefond from Toulouse, Augustine, and Paris Sastry from MIT. So the debate this is coming from is the debate that has been discussed already several times in this conference on stakeholder value, where I mean many people have called for firms to maximize something else than shareholder value. So from Elizabeth Warren to Robert Reich to even the CEOs of the business, a round table in between the lines of their declaration. And then for these people, obviously, maximizing shareholder value, if you try to maximize stakeholder value, you cannot really maximize shareholder value simply because kind of the reasoning goes, shareholder value is the sum of future dollar profits of a firm, and it excludes, you know, shareholders' social concerns. Okay, so it excludes kind of private benefits that shareholders would derive from the company doing good. Yet, if shareholders are altruistic, actually their pro-social preferences may affect prices. So it should be reflected somehow in the price that shareholders actually do care about something else than just dollars, simply because stock prices are not profits. Stock prices can be a vote of confidence for the firm. It can be a way to owning a firm that does good can be more than just, you know, the claim on dividends, while owning a firm that pollutes can be less than the claim on dividends. So that's the way preference for corporate social responsibility has been modeled in various papers. I'm not even sure I have all of them here, but since, you know, the early 2000s, until recent papers by Pedersen, Pastor, and Stambo, that, you know, when you own a stock, typically what you own is not just a claim to future dividends, but also, you know, private benefit that comes from, you know, how the firm is behaving and how you judge the company is behaving. There's also the intuitions behind social stock exchanges, where social enterprises, the stock of social enterprises, which are like essentially companies that are not trying to make money, I mean, they're making a little bit of money, but this is not their primary goal, can be traded. Okay, and there's also indirect evidence that shareholders actually do care about not just, you know, dividends, dollar dividends, but also how firms behave, from even studies and even recent paper by Hartman and Zussman, which is on mutual fund holdings. So, which is an investor holding of mutual fund shares. So there is indirect evidence, but nothing really direct. But, you know, that's kind of something that's everywhere in models and everywhere. So basically in this paper, what we're trying to investigate is why and how investors' social concerns are priced. Okay, so we're gonna start from an experimental paradigm where it is priced, as you will see. And basically we're gonna ask what are the channels through which investor social concerns are priced. Okay, so let me, before I explain a little bit more what we do, let me just, you know, unroll a few hypotheses of how investors' preferences are channeled into prices. Okay, what drives the pricing of social preferences? So one possibility is simply something that's being discussed in the literature, in particular by this paper by Stu Gilson and others, but, you know, in other papers too, which is impact investing or value alignment. So impact investing is very much along the line of the paper that Augustin presented yesterday, where basically by owning a firm, by conditioning your investment in a firm onto this firm's good behavior, that's what you want to achieve basically by investing in some firm. So a firm is polluting, and you're gonna tell the firm, okay, if you pollute less, I'm gonna give you money, or I'm giving you money under the condition that you end up polluting less. So that's kind of impact investing. So you buy the stock of the firm to change it. Or value alignment, where basically you don't really care about your own impact. You don't think you can have an impact on the firm, but you want to reward some of the firms for their good behavior in a sense. And that kind of goes back to different kind of preferences, moral preferences. Like is your moral preference unconditional on what you can do, or does it depend on on your actions? Another discussion that is often made is simply, I mean, going back to the Friedman 1974 New York Times op-ed, is the idea simply that pro-social investors may price pro-social preferences because these are not the pro-social preferences of these are not really the preferences of the end investors, but really of the mutual fund managers that are investing other people's money. So it's about doing good with other people's money. So it's just, the price of high ESG rating firms is simply high because asset managers want to feel good about themselves. Another channel that we can also discuss is the Hart and Zingales argument about the limitation to Friedman's argument, which is that Friedman says essentially, if I own a stock of a company that donates money to schools in Africa, I don't really care about that because I can donate money to schools in Africa myself. So the company has no particular comparative advantage at achieving that purpose of donating money to schools in Africa. But there are situations in which companies have a comparative advantage. For instance, it might be very hard to capture CO2 and to put it back from the air into the ground, but not polluting in the first place is kind of an easier way to fix that. And so maybe as I would want to own the stock of companies that do well, or invest in those companies in order to because companies have a comparative advantage at implementing the first best that I want. And then also your channel that matters is also the clarity of firms' pro-social behavior. And in a sense, that relates to the debate on greenwashing, CO2 offset programs. So greenwashing is really like, we don't really know whether the company is actually doing good or not. And the offset program is more like, the company at the same time emits CO2, but at the same time it buys carbon credit in order to, basically have an impact, a negative impact on CO2 emissions, and it's kind of its own moral attitude is unclear. And so, does it affect, investors' pricing of pro-social preferences? Okay, so basically testing this hypothesis is hard in the field. Simply because prices typically conflate profit reducing CSR and profit increasing CSR. So that's a well-known problem that, when a CSR decision is announced, it's not clear whether it's going to increase profits, in which case prices could go up, or it's going to decrease profits, but increase kind of the attitude of the firm, and therefore, generate, a positive reaction also because simply people like it. And it's also hard to isolate those different channels. So that's basically for these two reasons. That's why we're running an experiment on 1,500 participants. So it's a fairly large scale experiment that allows us to investigate these hypotheses. So before I go into the details, that's the experiment design in a nutshell. I'm gonna get more into the details, but that's the experiment in a nutshell. Basically, participants are presented with stocks, and those stocks pay a cash dividend pi minus C, and they give C to a charity. Okay, so as a participant, I can buy this stock. Okay, so pi minus C is a value, C is another value. Okay, so pi is basically the profit of the stock, and some C is given to a charity. And participants are asked to bid for these fictitious stocks. So then what we investigate, the empirical object we investigate is this beta right here, where across participants, what we do is that we compute this thing here, which is called which we call the excess bid. So that's the bid of the participant above and beyond the cash dividend of the stock. So it's kind of, the extra value that the participant attaches to the stock. That's due to the fact that the stock is paying some value C to a charity. And you know, basically what we ask is whether this excess bid is sensitive to how much the company is giving out. So if beta is 0, then people are Friedmanian, they just value stocks as equal to the cash dividend. If beta is more than 0, then people value somewhat the donation. And if beta is 1, they really value $1 of donation as $1 of value. Okay, so that's kind of how the donation is translated into value. So we call beta the pass-through, or the altruistic pass-through. And basically, we explore how beta changes across various conditions. So going back to the channels I've discussed earlier, we're going to discuss impact investing versus, you know, versus value alignment by asking whether, you know, a successful purchase changes the firm behavior or not in our experiment. We're going to ask whether participants can donate directly themselves, in which case, you know, the comparative advantage of the firm to donate is basically less because now participants can donate themselves. We're going to ask whether participants invest their own money or they invest another participant's money. That's to test the moral hazard kind of thing. And then, you know, we're going to vary also the clarity of the firm's pro-social behavior by, you know, introducing uncertainty. That's the one thing. And the second thing is basically by having the company donating to a charity and taking money from a charity at the same time. This is all actual money, so I will show you how it works, but that's kind of the idea. So basically, we're going to see whether, you know, these conditions affect the altruistic pass-through. And so basically what we find is very simple. It consists so first, in the paradigm, whether firms give away to a charity or not, has actually a fairly high pass-through. So that's indeed people price, you know, good behavior. Bidding is overall consistent with deontological preferences in the sense that it's independent of impact. It's independent of whether I'm managing my own money or not. It's independent on whether the company, whether I'm allowed to donate my own money or not. It looks like a vote of confidence in a sense. It's kind of the company does good, price is going to be high. Company does badly, price is going to be low. That's what seems to be happening. And of course, clarity matter, but in a simple additive way, in the sense that, you know, people value an expected charity donation exactly the way they value a certain donation. Basically, it's the same pass-through. It's 0.8. And if a company, you know, gives $1 to a charity, takes $0.5 from another charity, then, you know, people value this as 0.8 times 0.5, which is 1 minus 1, or 0.5. Okay, so that's consistent very much with, you know, with the models that I've discussed in the previous slide, you know, the models that have been written. And also, you know, you can easily build some kind of portfolio theory with private benefits in a sense as part of the portfolio returns. So I'm gonna, in what I have left, I'm gonna describe the experiment and go over a few results, perhaps not all of them, but you feel the spirit of what I have. So let me describe the experiment first, okay? So we recruit 1,500 people on MTurk on 5 consecutive batches. Some of them are in 2019, some of them are in the summer of 2020, you know, after the pandemic, but, you know, it's reasonably, I mean, their answers turn out to be reasonably reliable, as I can discuss later if you're interested. And participants, each participant is asked to value 3 stocks. So that's going to be 4,500 rounds, a bit less, as you will see in a second. So we're going to about 4,000, you know, rounds of stock valuation. So that's, you know, reasonably sized data, where basically they're presented in a random order with 3 stocks: a neutral stock that does not donate anything to any charity, so it's just a pure profit; an ethical stock which donates some of the pie profit to a charity; and an unethical stock, which is essentially, you know, taking away money from a charity. I will explain to you in a second how that works, but essentially, you know, it's kind of to simulate also the polluting stocks, you know, as well as good doing stocks. And valuation is measured through a standard bidding mechanism in the experimental literature, whereby basically it's a second price auction with a machine. So the participant bids B, the machine draws a random, price, and if the participants wins the auction against the machine, so if the participant bids more than the random machine, the participant pays the price, the random price to own the stock, and then upon owning the stock, the participant gets pi, and C may or may not be given to a charity. And it's well known. It's a well-known algorithm. It turns out to give good results, as you will see, etc. So that's kind of it's totally standard. So now let me just describe a bit more in detail, but that's kind of the idea. So you define. We initially. So how does it work? Like sequentially. So first we defined 2 wallets with initial endowment. So the participant is given $2. It's $2. It's actual money. So the participant is given $2 of money, and the charity is given $1. Why do we have a charity wallet? It's to implement the pollution thing. So basically, whenever the company is going to be an unethical company, money is going to be taken from the charity wallet. So that's money that we as experimenter pledge to give to the, to the charity, but that money is going to decrease if upon the appearance of the unethical company. And participants, so it depends on the conditions. It turns out to not matter, but there are 6 charities that kind of span the space of causes, from children to food to development, etc. That in some conditions the participant can pick. In some other conditions, it's just randomly chosen. It turns out to not matter actually, not that much. We then provide, before they actually start doing the thing, we provide them with a simple example of BDM bidding. So Jean-François, who's the psychologist of the group, was very afraid that people would not get it. And so basically we describe how that works, in an example with a step-by-step explanation of the effect on both wallets. And then something that we believe is very important and we are very happy with, a very good, I don't know that it's an innovation, but at least it's something that that gives us a lot of confidence in our results, is that we have a practice quiz. So the practice quiz makes sure that all consequences are understood. So before we actually went to the practice quiz, we actually ran a first live test in the lab. So Jean-François sat with physical participants and could see that, whether they were struggling and where they were struggling. Then we ran a pilot survey to make sure that, people understood the thing. So it was not really an experiment. It was just checking that people understand what happens, sequentially. And then basically we set up that practice quiz that we embed in the experiment, where there are like 2 examples where people are presented with one ethical and one unethical firm. And then, they have a successful bid, a failed bid, and we ask them to forecast what will be the impact of these bids on both wallets. And they cannot proceed unless they ace the quiz, and they have 3 attempts max. Okay, so we're sure that the people that the data that we have is from people that understand the consequences of their choices. They really do understand. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so they really do understand. So then we have 4. So then we proceed to the actual experiment if you pass the quiz. So there are 3 bids, as I said, because there are like 3 companies that are presented in random order. It turns out that the order doesn't matter that much, but it's just to control for priming, for the sequence, that might matter. And profits are drawn randomly. Charity donations are drawn randomly, from $0.5 to $1 for profits, from $0.1 to $0.5 for charity donations. It's drawn at random. And then we recap the final amounts on both wallets. Okay, so that's the idea. So then, of course, we have the various conditions that we need in order to test our various channels. So besides the baseline, we've got the one with impact. So the one with impact is very simple. It's basically about saying, okay, the charity wallet will be affected if and only if the bid goes through. Okay, so if I manage to buy the company, then the charity is going to get money. If I don't manage to buy the company, then the charity is not going to get money. Okay, so that's kind of the impact condition. And the baseline condition doesn't have that. In the baseline condition, whether I buy the company or not upon my bid, it doesn't change, it doesn't change anything as to whether the company receives something or not. So it's kind of what we call the impact versus, value alignment kind of condition, basically. And where one condition, whether I buy the firm or not, doesn't matter. On the other, it actually affects, whether the company, the charity receives money or not, or is taken money from or not. So that's the impact one. Then we just allow people to donate directly at the end, and we warn them in advance of that possibility in kind of the comparative advantage condition, where basically in the baseline condition, they're not allowed to donate. So maybe that's why, they kind of, they may tend to overbid for firms simply because, that's kind of the only way to donate in a sense. So we allow people to donate directly at the end. There's the moral hazard condition where basically we implement some kind of delegation game where they're told that people that they're not managing their own money, but the money of another participants in the list. And they are actually, because it turns out that the wallet that they have at the end of the game is given to the next participant on the list. So it's really they're really managing someone else's money. We make sure in the quiz that they understand that it's not their own money, but the money of someone else, so they really understand. So in the quiz, we're sure that they understand. Otherwise, they don't pass the quiz, they don't participate. And then we implement, the random donation, so there's a toss of a coin and, the charity may receive $0 or $0.50. And same for the second, the ambiguity condition, where basically at the same time, the company implements a positive and a negative donation. So that's kind of, so we have those different things, and we end up with 4,100 rounds of bidding. What are the results? So I have how many how many minutes do I have? I can't hear you. Okay, I can't hear you.
That's sorry, 9 minutes. Sorry. Yeah.
9 minutes?
Yeah.
That's great.
8:30.
Okay. So first, what the paradigm in general, like kind of the experimental paradigm in general, kind of achieves sort of the baseline fact that we care about, which is that donation, like non-direct dollars, are actually priced in those bids. So essentially, so that's kind of the key thing. So we run that regression, which is on the cross section of our results, of our experimental results. On the left-hand side here, you have what we call the excess bid, which is the bid minus the selfish dividend, or the dollar dividend that the stock is paying. Okay, so the spread, so sort of the excess bid in excess to the dividend on how much the stock is donating. Okay, and basically the sensitivity here is the pass-through, and that's the result here. The graph here that you're seeing is just the result of that regression. Okay, so it's the average excess bid per charity donation. Remember, charity donation is discrete. Okay, it goes from minus 0.5 to plus 0.5. So it's fairly linear, and the constant is almost 0. I think it's fine to consider that it's 0, and beta is 0.8. So essentially, each dollar of charity donation gives rise to an increase in the price by 80 cents. So that's kind of, it's a fairly high pass-through, which is good for us because we want to make it vary. So it's good that we start with a high pass-through. And interestingly, it's symmetrical, completely symmetrical. So if a company donates $0.50 to a charity, the price is going to be 0.8 times 0.5 higher. Okay, so 0.4 higher. If a company takes away $0.50 from a charity, then the price is going to be 0.4 lower. Okay, so it's the same, it's symmetrical really. Okay, so now let's try to investigate the channel by basically changing, the condition. So the first one is impact. So basically, remember there are two. So here in this graph, in this table, there are two columns. Column 1 is the baseline. Okay, so it's it's not all of the data that I showed you before. So it's just, it's just the corresponding baseline here. So So you have indeed that every dollar of charity value generates an excess bid that is 0.8 dollars higher. Okay, so that's column 1. And then in column 2, what you have is the corresponding conditions. So where people were subject to the same, with the same people in the same experiment, the same batch, where people are now told, and we check that they understand, that the charity only receives money whenever the bid succeeds. Okay, if the bid fails, charity doesn't get money, or if the bid fails, charity is not taken money from when the C is negative. And here we see exactly the same path through. Okay, the test, the p-value of the different tests is very large. So essentially, what we're seeing here is that it doesn't matter at all whether the charity is actually going to get the donation or not. If my bid is successful or not, I really want to basically reward firms for good behavior in a sense, and that goes in favor of kind of the value alignment view of ESG investing over the impact investing view in this particular setting, at least. Remember, we quiz participants to make sure that they understand the difference that is kind of, that they're pivotal in the second experiment. Okay, then we test comparative advantage. So here we're comparing two conditions. One condition, it's actually slightly different from that, but that's fine for presentation. So here there are two different conditions. So condition 1 is where is the baseline, and condition 2, so the second column, is a situation where people can actually donate themselves. Okay, so they can donate money. So whenever they can donate money, actually, so if we believe that, whenever the comparative advantage of companies to actually do good disappears, the excess price of good doing companies should go down. We don't find that at all in the data. Okay, so here the sensitivity is the same. Whether the company has a comparative advantage at donating versus not. So that's again, kind of going in the direction of saying it's a vote of confidence for the company rather than just, a way to donate. It's really just it's a vote. The company is doing the right thing in a sense.
David,
so
sorry, you have 3 minutes.
That's good. Moral hazard. I have 3 tables to show, so that's perfect. So moral hazard now. So moral hazard does not drive pricing. So here I'm comparing the two conditions. So the conditions where people manage other people's money, and the condition where people manage their own money. So again, here I'm showing the two beta parameters here, the two pass-throughs. So it's true that the pass-through under delegation is slightly higher, but not significantly so. Okay, so the p again, the p-value is fairly high here. So I still tend to overprice, good doing stocks a lot, even when I'm managing my own money compared to when I'm managing other people's money, in a sense. And I don't even see a difference here. There's a slight, positive difference, but it's not significant. Okay. So managing other people's money does not seem to make participants bid significantly higher. And now the last two conditions, which pertain to clarity of ESG behavior, of CSR, of socially responsible behavior. So the first one is basically by comparing certain. So column 1 is a certain donation. So donation is certain. It's going to be $0.5 given to charity X. Column 2 is uncertain. So again, there's under one. So I'm going to toss a coin. We have a coin that flips, and we have a picture with a coin that flips. And then we tell them, okay, you can have the positive or a negative charity value, and we don't know which one it's going to be. And so basically the regression we run here is the excess bid on the expected charity donation here. Okay, and what we find is that the pricing of the expected donation is the same as the pricing of the certain donation in the baseline condition. So in a sense, uncertainty affects pricing, but really in a way of taking the expected value of charity of charity donation, really. Same for ambiguity. So now ambiguity is the one where the company at the same time donates and takes away, okay? And here we have this number, which is the net donation, okay, on which we regress the excess bid. And again, what we find is that the coefficient on the excess bid tends to be the same. There's a slight difference here, so I mean statistically, but it's not easy, or it's barely significant. So I guess the takeaway is that there's not much difference. If the net donation has the same effect as a certain single donation to a firm per dollar of net donation in a sense. So again, ambiguity affects pricing, but in a very additive way. So the bottom line is this. In our experiments, corporate donation is 80% priced. Okay, that's not due to confusion. We check with a quiz. Such pricing is consistent with deontological preferences, okay, independent of impact, of moral hazard, of a comparative advantage. So not on impact, but really, it really seems to be a vote of confidence for the firm. Of course, uncertain or ambiguous CSR is going to be priced in, of course. If it's not less than probability 1 that the company is going to do good, the price is going to be lower, but in a way that is completely additive. So the consequences are twofold. First, shareholder, but I won't be insisting on that because the authors don't really agree on this. But the second point is really the one that I want you to take away, is that it's possible. So people behave kind of deontologically. And second, it seems possible to extend standard portfolio theory, which is with cash dividends, to non-pecuniary benefits for stocks. Basically, you can add the non-pecuniary benefits and assemble stocks together in a coherent portfolio, and that will give you the equivalent of a single firm. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, David. The discussant is Enrichetta Ravina from Northwestern. You also have 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to discuss this paper. I found it very interesting and actually very topical as well. So I'm going to summarize very quickly the paper. David did an excellent job in presenting it, so we don't really need it. So the question of the paper is, do shareholders value ethical behavior in firms? And if they do, how much are they willing to pay for it? And what is exactly the mechanism that induces them to pay that much? They run a lab experiment to answer this question using 1,500 subjects on Mechanical Turk. And the advantage of a lab experiment is that it allows them to abstract from a lot of things that are going on in real life and focus on this mechanism. The paper and the presentation are slightly different, but I don't think it will matter. So there are 5 treatments. 2 treatments are such that you cannot donate in the end. So if you want to reward the company that is ethical, the only way you can do it is by paying a higher price for it. And you can do it either in a baseline setting in which the company will receive some donation, regardless of whether you end up buying the stock or not, or you can do it in a setting in which you are quote unquote pivotal, meaning like, maybe pivotal is not the right term. It's a setting in which the charity is given to the company only if you actually buy the stock. So there are a lot of people, and maybe you are atomistic, but you do your small part in giving money to this company. And then there is a donation setting in which, in addition to paying more or less for an ethical company, at the end of the experiment, out of your profits, you can also take part of it and give it to the company. So what they find is that subjects are willing to pay about 80 cents for every dollar that is donated to charity. And this effect is linear, meaning, it doesn't matter if you double the amount, you double the willingness to pay. And it's also symmetric. It is the same type of relationship when we talk about unethical firms that take away from charity. One other thing that it's interesting is that being pivotal or investing on behalf of others doesn't change the valuation. And finally, the possibility of donating to the charity at the end doesn't seem to affect the behavior and the pricing as well. And this, I thought, is a little bit in line with the Milton Friedman idea of, we would really like firms to maximize their profits because as shareholders, we could always take part of those profits and give it to a firm. And here, the subjects don't seem to think that way. And maybe it's the setting, or maybe this is an idea that is not intuitive in real life unless you explain it to people. But it doesn't seem like that people say, oh, I just go for the maximum profits and then I can distribute money myself later. Okay, so these are my comments. First of all, I like the paper very much. It's great that we have the possibility of doing lab experiments because they help us understand the mechanism that too many confounding effects in real life. Of course, I'm the discussant, and so I will have to also say something more critical, hopefully constructive about the paper. So one question that I have, one issue that I have is the sample selection. So the workers on Mechanical Turks tend to be lower income, maybe younger than the typical investor. And even controlling on age and income, it's possible that they are, let's say, unobservably different. They might have different preferences. There are a lot of papers that say that studying economics makes people less charitable, more greedy, more likely to want to free ride. Even just priming them for their profession, like in the finance sector, makes them less compassionate. So one question that it would be interesting to address, and maybe the authors know, I think they know who invests in the stock market and who doesn't, maybe they know the occupation. It would be interesting to see if you are primed or if you are in finance or economics. Are you more profit-oriented and are you less, quote unquote, deontological in the way you address these companies? Another thing is the stake. So maybe in lower stake settings, people feel like they want to reward charitable companies, but when it comes, for example, to their 401k or managing large endowments or mutual funds, then they think about profits more. So this is one critique that is always true in experiments, and maybe if you have time and if you have the resources, you could see if increasing the stakes generates a different type of behavior, or there is still the same effect. Finally, for this page at least, I have a question also about the way the quiz is set up. So the authors should be commended because they make really every effort possible to make sure that their subjects understand what they are doing. They check and they exclude those that don't. And one thing that I wonder is whether the way the quiz is set up might create an anchor or a misunderstanding in the experiment. So if you look at the quiz, the ethical company has a profit of 1.5 and gives to charity 0.4. So that at the end of the day, you as an investor end up with 1.1. The unethical company gives is a much lower profit, 0.7, takes away from the charity 0.4, so you end up with 1.1. And I wonder if this, and maybe my reading of the paper, but I wonder if this leaves people with the impression that charitable companies are also companies that have higher profits, that all else equal, you end up more or less with the same amount, 1.1. So you might as well give to charity then. And this is a possibility. Finally, statistical power. The authors don't find that a lot of the treatments are significant. Delegating, for example, having an impact, direct impact on how much money the charity receives. And I wonder if that is due. Economically, the two coefficients are slightly different. Maybe even if you look out of $1, they are maybe significantly different, but they are not statistically different. And I wonder if there is a way to add more subjects to each of the arms and see if we can separate those. Maybe we cannot. Possible extension. So I think one thing that it would be interesting to see is since the demographics for these people are available, is to understand how the distribution of the preferences relates to the demographics. Is it true that millennials, for example, are more likely to give to this type of company. Like, it's at least the word on the street that that's the case. Democrats, women, are there any differences, and are these preferences measured in the lab, line up, or tell us something different than what we think goes on in reality? Then what happens when we put these people in context? And so I think an interesting extension would be to see, what if I have to pick what if I have to decide whether I want to give money to a tobacco company that also does a lot of charity? They do greenwashing. How do they react? Is the $1 of charity worth the same, or is it less? Do they really care about giving to charity, or are they rewarding the company and their business per se? And what happens when it's more difficult to understand how much of the money that you give, quote unquote, to the company by purchasing the stock actually goes to CSR? And here, I think the authors, with the clarity of treatment, are already going in that direction. Finally, I think it would be interesting to see what happens when other people can observe your actions. So, or whether you can sort of signal you being good for, to others. Would you be willing to pay more or less? Would it matter across the different settings? And one thing that I thought it was interesting is also that it doesn't seem to matter what type of charity you are donating to. So, which is maybe it's real, maybe it's just the donation itself, but it seems counterintuitive. Maybe some people care about the environment, but really don't care about children or something else. And so it seems that they should sort of be more likely to give to certain causes than other. And maybe the correlation between these preferences, the demographics, will tell us something as well. Like the charity that you got, depending on your demographics, were you more or less willing to give?
Cheta, you have 1 minute.
Okay, perfect. So this is basically the last slide. One question I think that is results, at least may come to my mind, is that so now that we know and we have this measurement and these results, either qualitative or quantitative, what can a company do then to maximize share price? What should you tell people? What should you do? Is it worth it to give to charity? One other thing related to this, it seems that the preference for corporate social responsibility are very strong in the lab. Maybe, well, it's difficult, like the author points out, to really pinpoint this mechanism in real market, but they seem quite strong. And I wonder why. What are the features that in real life dampen this effect? Maybe we don't trust that the companies are giving to charity. Maybe we don't realize, or it's not the most salient thing that they do. What else is going on? Other comments we can talk about later. So to conclude, this is a very important and interesting question. How do investors value CSR? And the authors designed a very clever experiment and found interesting results. It's definitely a paper worth reading, and I look forward to read the next version. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you very much. David, would you like to respond to the discussion?
Yeah, but just more like, because it was a very thought-provoking discussion, so it's very, it's not really response, but reactions to the reactions. Thank you very much, Enriqueta. It's great. Please send us the slides. Just a few things. So on demographics, I agree. We should look at them again. My recollection is that we don't find that much. I think an interesting fact, and I don't know what it means, but I will just deliver it this way, just like this. We ran the experiment on 120 MFin students, so Masters in Finance students at MIT, from like various countries, mostly foreigners. Not US citizens. And it turns out there is not that much difference. So they were not even playing their own money. So it was like fictitious money. And they gave very similar results. like a slightly lower pass-through, but I don't think it was significant. So in a sense, that's kind of a demographically very different sample, but it's not professional. I agree with you that why not having like higher stakes and professionals, why not? Something to think about. On having more detailed context, like having a tobacco company that at the same time is funding lung cancer research, for instance. That would be like the extreme thing. So how would you? So we could try that. The thing is, there is virtue in having a very stark, very simple context, and that may explain why actually we're getting like those very high pass-throughs in a sense. So maybe like if we start like feeding people with more information and having them like figure. So yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we have the feeling that we get more external validity by having a starker context, but at the same time, you know, I don't know, because if in the tobacco company example, depending on whether you're a smoker or not, like you're bringing in your entire like internal universe to the lab, and we want to try to avoid that. But I agree with you that it's not an obvious decision to make. The last thing is on the irrelevance of the charity. So whether like it's, you know, food for the poor or save the children, etc., it doesn't really matter whether you choose it or not. And, you know, so it's kind of so in a sense, it means people don't have real preferences. It goes in the direction of the rest of the additivity results. Like, you know, like when you have like an uncertain, you know, donation, 1 or 0, people put 0.5. When it's ambiguous, like +1 and -1, people put 0, something like this. And again, here you kind of add everything up. So it's kind of, it goes in the direction of saying we could build a portfolio theory of social, of pro-social behavior, something like that. Yes, but yeah. Thank you very much, Nikita. Please send us the slide.
All right, thank you very much.